Some of us enjoy surprises more than others. A surprise party thrown in our honor might be either a thrill or an unendurable shock. But no matter how we deal with surprises, there's no avoiding them. To the beloved Jewish writer Isaac Bashevis Singer, the element of surprise was the hallmark of his craft. A story to me means a plot where there is some surprise, he once said, because that is how life is, full of surprises. Among the many laws and instructions we find in this week's Torah portion, Ki Tetzei, you find that the element of surprise links two verses with subjects that seem to be completely different from one another. One of these verses is well known. It's the requirement for every Israelite to remember the nation of Amalek and its brutal attack on our ancestors while they wandered through the desert. Now, earlier in the portion, we find another verse that instructs the Israelites to jog their collective memory. Remember what Adonai your God did to Miriam on the journey after you left Egypt. This verse speaks of the episode in the book of Numbers in which Moses' siblings complain openly to God about Moses' choice in spouses. As a punishment for criticizing God's favorite prophet, Miriam is stricken with tzara'at, a skin affliction found in other places in the Torah. The story of Amalek's attack and Miriam's criticisms seem to have little to do with one another. In the case of Amalek, the Israelites are ruthlessly attacked and then wind up prevailing in battle. The story of Miriam, meanwhile, centers around the ill effects that evil speech has on a community and on individuals. The story of Amalek deals with external conflict, while Miriam's ordeal is an internal conflict, probably nothing more than a family squabble. The stories just don't seem that similar, and yet our experiences reading them in the text are very similar indeed. The wording of each verse is almost identical, and the verses also have the same cantillation marks. They're sung in the exact same way. Do these verses have more in common than we thought? Perhaps they do. They both contain the element of surprise. The attack of Amalek is unique in the Torah, not in its violence and in its damage, but rather in its method. Amalek is the only people in the desert that attacks the Israelites from behind. And in the case of Miriam, God afflicts her with tzara'at as a result of malicious and angry words, even though the punishment for evil speech had never been delineated in the Torah. Miriam must have been as surprised as anyone at her punishment. Perhaps nothing would have been said if this punishment had been made known beforehand. So when the Torah uses the word zachor, that is, when God wants us to specifically remember, we might suggest that the text is asking us to be cognizant of the element of surprise. As Isaac Bashevis Singer reminds us, surprise is an integral part of the human experience, and as our portion teaches us, the best we can do is to watch out for it, prepare for when it might happen, and to embrace the moments that are not always straightforward and never dull.